says it's over 21 degrees today. I'm approaching Armentières now, and I'll try and avoid going through the centre, as it were. I've got no need to go through the busy part, and just want to skirt around the outside and push on through the other side. So let's see what happens.
And from Armentières I would head into Belgium to Kemmel, where I would be camping nearby. And along the way I would pass close by to what was known in the war as the Messines Ridge.
This old fella in front of me, he just come past me like anything. Didn't realise he's got an electric bike. I can't quite work out if I'm in Belgium already. I've seen as many Belgian cars as I have French. Yeah, there's a Belgian one, look. Where do you live? I live on the roundabout, look. That's what you call a bike.
The name of the village is Plugstreet, but to the British Tommy it was called Plugstreet. It was a place well known to the soldiers, being so close to the front line. By now it was really quite warm and I was more than ready for another break, so I stopped by at the Plugstreet 1418 Interpretation Centre for a cold drink and a look around. This small modern museum features new high-tech scenography displays of the battles, and also highlights the terrible wounds and conditions endured by the soldiers during the Great War.
Wow, that's quite some memorial, yeah? Wow. Right, I've got to push on really. It's getting on for 5 o'clock now and I've still got probably another hour to go to the campsite, and I've not made a booking or anything, so I'm just keeping them crossed that they're going to be I'll be able to get in there. This is quite a good view. I don't know if you can see, but in that direction over here there's like a church. That's Messines, okay? And as you can see quite clearly, that sits on higher ground than obviously the lower lying land.
The Germans had held Messines Ridge since the early months of the war, and the high ground gave commanding views of the British defences around Ypres to the north. General Haig had big plans to push east from Ypres, but for that to happen the Messines Ridge would have to be taken from the Germans. The British Second Army, led by General Plumer, devised a well thought out plan, bringing together much improved artillery to work closely with infantry along with tanks and the aircraft of the Royal Flying Corps. But it's the use of mines that is synonymous at Messines Ridge. These were dug by tunnelling companies who had taken over 2 years to dig 26 deep mines along the 9-mile ridge, filled with 450 tonnes of high explosive and placed right underneath the German strongpoints. So on the 7th of June 1917 at 3:10 am the attack at Messines opened with the detonation of the mines. The combined explosion devastated the German lines in what was at the time the largest ever explosion created by man, which was said to have been heard by the Prime Minister David Lloyd George in London. Thousands of German soldiers were killed in the blast, and those left standing were to suffer an intense artillery bombardment just before an all-out assault of 9 infantry divisions made up of British, Irish, Canadian, Australian and New Zealand troops. Artillery continued to protect the advance with a creeping barrage, along with hundreds of machine guns unleashing a storm of covering fire. The German defences had been smashed to pieces and offered little resistance, and by mid-afternoon the Allies had captured the entire ridge, 7,000 prisoners and the village of Messines. The Battle of Messines was a turning point as it marked the first major British success of the war. This long overdue victory was a huge boost to the war effort and was well reported in all the newspapers of the day. However, the Battle of Messines left a legacy, as several of the mines were abandoned or never used, and were just left in situ after the war. And that's how things stayed until 1955 when, during a summer thunderstorm, lightning struck a pylon setting off one of the long-forgotten mines. The explosion left a huge 60-foot deep crater, with the only victim on this occasion being a very unlucky cow that was in the wrong place at the wrong time and was killed in the blast. Of the 19 mines exploded at Messines, the craters of most can still be found in the fields and farms, all of which are now filled with water as a result of the high water table and the clay soil in the area.
So there's the first 2 mine craters I've seen from the Messines Ridge. Plugstreet 1 and 2 they are. Yeah, well impressive they are. Very windy up here. I thought the drone was going to get blown off the top, but yeah, really good.
So I checked into the campsite at Kemmel and rounded off the day with a well-earned cold beer or two and reflected on another fantastic day on the road.
Morning.
Okay, greeted by rain this morning. Oh well, I knew it was too good to last. Okay, I'm in Kemmel sort of town square where the tourist office is, and it's from the tourist office that you can buy tickets to come and visit the trenches called Bayernwald, which are about 2 or 3 miles outside of town. So I'm going to go there and take a look. Very good tourist information centre, I might add. Up on the first floor they've got like a bit of a mini museum and information boards and video play all about the Messines Ridge operation. So again, if ever you're in the area, pop by, check it out, it's really good. Well, in Kemmel I seem to have caught a bit of a market or something, so before I set off I'm just going to have a little Danish pastry of some kind, but it was probably a Belgian pastry actually, isn't it? Very nice. Ah, what a nightmare. I've just had an accident. See this track? I was just going along and this great big tractor came along, started to slow down for me, but there's no way he was going to get past. So I just pulled over just onto this grass verge and didn't realise it led down into that ditch. And I've gone all the way in and all my gear's gone in. Ah, at least it ain't raining. Oh my god. The tractor driver, fair play, he stopped, the farmer guy, and he helped me get the bike out, and once he could see I was alright, he did have a little bit of a laugh. But I don't blame him, I'd laugh as well. All stung to buggery now. That. Oh well. It's all part of the fun, isn't it? Ah, what a morning. That's actually the second time the bike's gone over. First time was at the campsite. I'm readying myself to leave and the owner comes out, knocks my bike over. I didn't realise it until a little while ago that my helmet's cracked. I mean, I can wear it, but it definitely needs replacing. It's got a big crack along the front now. Ah. And so without any further dramas I cycled to the slopes of the Messines Ridge, where just yards behind the German front line is a section of reconstructed trenches that were rediscovered during a dig in the 1970s. Bayernwald, which means Bavarian forest, was named by the Bavarian army that held this area from October of 1914. These trenches are restored from original layout plans showing how they would have been in 1916. And these particular trenches are second line and support line trenches. The position of the front line trench is beyond the tree line and is now farmland. The Germans had long held these trenches and so made improvements to comfort and strengthen where possible. You can see here the German method of revetment, using wooden strips known as wattle to strengthen the walls and keep them from falling in. The bunkers are original. You can see the low ceilings no more than 4 feet in height, and being uncomfortably small they were generally only used by the German soldiers to shelter from artillery fire. This is an entrance to a mine shaft. There are 2 here at Bayernwald, and these were sunk to try and detect and then destroy British tunnellers that were known to be active in the area. The shafts are nearly 20 metres deep. Mining was the secret underground war where tunnellers worked in complete silence to dig and plant explosives and also to detect counter enemy tunnellers yet remain undetected themselves. One of the soldiers serving here in 1914 was a 25-year-old Adolf Hitler. As a company messenger with the 16th Bavarian Reserve Regiment, he took messages to and from battalion headquarters and was at times operating close to the front lines. It is said that whilst he was based in Bayernwald, Hitler was awarded an Iron Cross whilst helping a wounded comrade under fire. In 1915, his unit moved to France, where he would face the Australians at Fromelles, before moving south to the Somme area, where he would later gain an Iron Cross First Class. This medal he was to always wear in later years. Hitler was to be wounded on several occasions and was hospitalised at least twice. He had a habit of surviving, even in heavy action when those around him were killed or wounded. And it's said that one of his nicknames in the regiment was the Cockroach, because he seemed unkillable. Years later, as Führer, Hitler was to return after the fall of France and Belgium in 1940 and toured the places where he once served. Here he stands by a bunker near Fromelles where he was once posted as a messenger in 1916. The bunker still stands and is now known as Hitler's Bunker. Bayernwald is a great example of a German trench system from World War I. Although impossible to imagine how it was for the soldiers waiting for the next attack to happen, you get an idea of what life must have been like living in the confines of a small narrow trench, and I'd certainly recommend this place for a visit. Cute looking little chapel, isn't it? Today's going to be a much shorter day riding. I mean, yesterday worked out about 38 miles. Should have been slightly less, but I did a few wrong turns. No, so today it's going to be a much shorter day. Hello. Die Gangrute? I have no idea what that means. I think where I'm stopping so frequently to see all the memorials and the places of interest, it really stretches the day out. So yeah, much shorter day today. 14 miles maybe. So some sort of French memorial. Oh, this is to commemorate members of the resistance during the Second World War.
They played their part, they. What we've got here is Hill 60. And it all looks rather nice now, but like just about everywhere else in the Ypres salient, it would have been an absolute hellhole. It's a complete scene of devastation. What we're looking at also is, well, many men went missing in this area. It's their grave. This is their final resting spot.
Capturing Messines Ridge allowed the next phase of the offensive, known as the Third Battle of Ypres or Passchendaele, to begin. I'm here on the Menin Road by the memorial to the 18th Division. This spot was known as Clapham Junction in the war. It's about 3 miles west from Ypres, and in August of 1917 was just behind the British front line. Glencorse Wood was the objective of the 18th Division, and they were holding the line in approximately the area marked dark blue. The memorial commemorates all the brigades of which it was formed. We can see here the 55th Brigade and the 8th East Surreys, which was Uncle Jack's unit, which featured in previous videos. We also have here the 12th Middlesex, and serving in their ranks was a 19-year-old private named Leonard Tringham. Len was my great uncle.
So the 12th Middlesex were holding the line just near to these woods here. These are Glencorse Woods.
So the Battle of Passchendaele began on the 31st of July 1917, and so did the unseasonably heavy rains which turned the battlefield into a mud bath. Just a week or so later, Uncle Len said that whilst advancing in the open, he heard machine gun fire and saw a soldier to his left suddenly drop to the ground, and that was the last thing that Len remembered of that day. Len had been caught in a shell blast and was to lay where he fell in no man's land, barely conscious and unable to move. He had been severely wounded in the face and had been completely blinded. After 3 days, a party of stretcher bearers looking for the wounded came by, and were it not for Len moving his hand, they may well have assumed him dead and just carried on.
So after 3 days in no man's land, Len was eventually recovered, and because of the severity of his wounds, he was evacuated straight away back to England.
Len had lost most of his nose, parts of his cheek and his right eye in the blast. Originally he was taken to a non-specialist facial hospital where an initial operation to rebuild his nose and face had failed. The Queen's Hospital in Sidcup was opened in 1917 in response to the high number of casualties from the Somme. The hospital, the first ever for facial injuries, was led by New Zealand-born surgeon Harold Gillies. Gillies was to develop the already known practice of plastic surgery from its origins in ancient Egypt and India. He would pioneer new methods and techniques, and his work was considered the birth of plastic surgery as it's known today. And finding himself in his care was Leonard Tringham. On admission, Len, like all patients, was either drawn in pastel or painted in watercolour. Records documented the treatment given, and photographs recorded the transformation of the patient. Gillies developed new techniques to move live human tissue from one part of the body to repair another. A flap of skin could be lifted, rolled and stitched together, and then attached to another part of the body. This method was called a tube pedicle, which aided the blood flow and encouraged new growth. Len's new nose was created using this technique, with skin taken from the chest area. A supportive structure was made from cartilage taken from the rib cage. Fortunately for Len, he was to recover the sight in his left eye, but his right eye had been completely lost. He would later be fitted with an artificial eye, but Len preferred to use an eye patch in later years. For some patients, custom-made sections of face were made and fitted with an artificial eye, which were then held in place with spectacles. The results were purely aesthetic, but sometimes it was all that could be offered. But Gilly strongly believed that restoring function was as important as the cosmetic repair, if not more so. He worked closely with specialist dentitians to rebuild mouths and jaws, so men were able to chew and eat their own food once again. The vast array of injuries meant that no two disfigurements were the same. Gillies and his team of surgeons developed new methods and carefully made notes to record treatment and outcome. Some men suffered terrible burns. These were more common with sailors or pilots, where planes had been engulfed in flames. These were often very challenging, and if required, full-face skin grafts could be taken, usually from the chest area. Reconstruction was a slow and lengthy process, being done step by step. After each operation, Len would spend some time recuperating in the hospital before being discharged home, until a few weeks had passed to then be readmitted for the next operation. Over the course of the next 5 years, Len was to endure no less than 24 operations. Patients were offered the chance to learn new skills such as farming, bookbinding, carpentry and toy making. Gilly saw this as an important part of rehabilitation, to help the men into work and to lead full and happy lives after the war. Len was to learn woodwork and would go on to make items such as ironing boards as gifts for the family. Generally speaking, veterans didn't say too much about their time in the war, but in later years Len was to tell his story to an interested nephew, and that nephew was my father. Dad told me that Uncle Len always thought highly of his care, and would always say that the Queen's Hospital was the very best hospital in the world. Of all the images we have of Len, I like this one the best. I think this smile says it all, and it goes to show that even after all the horrors and the pain and the suffering and the many operations that Len endured when he was a young 19, 20, 22-year-old, it goes to show that he did go on to live a normal, happy life, and here he is at the wedding of his daughter. It's a great picture. Well, thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Please check out part 7 as I continue my adventures in Belgium.